everybody, my name is Michelle and in this video I'm going to do my March reading wrap up. So March overall, it just wasn't the best reading month for me. I still finished 5 books, but overall, apart from that, especially the last couple of weeks, I just wasn't feeling the reading mood. I was kind of in a reading slump again. And I never like it when it's like that. I don't know, it wasn't really my month when it comes to reading. The most reading I did was probably during the 24-hour basically readathon, which I have a reading vlog of if you want to watch that. That was really fun, but apart from that, I don't know, I wasn't really feeling it. And I did finish some books, but most of them were rereads, to be honest. So maybe this one will be a little bit shorter, but you know, it is what it is. And I think I should probably just get to the books and tell you all about what I finished, what I did read, and what I thought of them. The first one that I finished was The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. And this is immediately a book that I have a lot of thoughts on and some mixed feelings. So like this review might be a bit more interesting than the rest of them. So The Four Winds is about a young woman named Elsa, and she lives in the 1930s in Texas. But she lives there during the Great Depression, and it's her job to keep her 2 children alive during this very horrible time period. There is more to it, but then that's exactly my first point of critique, that there isn't that much more to it. So as you may know, Kristen Hanna is one of my all-time favorite authors. Her book The Nightingale is one of my all-time favorite books. I love her writing, I love her stories, and especially her last 2 books, which were The Nightingale and The Great Alone, were just amazing. And this is now her latest release, The Four Winds, and I'm so sad to say, but I wasn't completely feeling it. First of all, because as I said before, there wasn't that much to the story. There was just, it's mostly, look, here's the depression, the Great Depression in the United States. It was horrible, and I understand that it was horrible, and I think the way that it was described, it sounded very well researched to me. Like, it sounded that it was quite historically accurate. And I say sound because I haven't done my own research regarding the time period, so I cannot confirm it with like 100% certainty, but it sounds like there has been a lot of work has gone into that piece of the book. But then at the same time, I feel like this book doesn't have much else to offer apart from that. And that doesn't mean that it was horrible, because I don't think it was a horrible book. Some of Kristen Hanna's themes that are very prominent in all her books were also very much there in this one. In Kristen Hanna books, the main characters are always women, and it's also very much about family, about friendships, usually also about sisters or mothers and daughters. That was still here and still very well done with all its flaws and nuances, and that is just something that I will always enjoy, and I will always love to read Kristen Hanna's take on that. Also, her writing is amazing. Even in this book, it wasn't my favorite. Her writing is still great. It is so easy to get through. It is so atmospheric. Even though the atmosphere is quite horrible with the Great Depression, it is still very atmospheric and just so engaging. And yeah, I can never critique Kristen Hanna's writing because I think it was very good. But then again, I come back to the thing that there wasn't that much substance to the book apart from those things. There were some amazing themes, there was a good historical background, there were some interesting main characters, but then apart from that, of course, those are all great things, but then the plot really wasn't that strong. The plot could have been so much stronger as with some of her other books, but in this book, that just wasn't the case. I felt that there could have been more. I felt it took such a long time to get started. And at the same time, I didn't mind, because as I said, I love Kristen Hanna's writing, and I still got through it so quickly, and I still loved it so much. I actually read a big part of it during another 24-hour readathon, which I will also link down below in the description box. So it wasn't slow in the regard of reading, but it was very slow in regards to plot, to a point where it annoyed me a bit. And then also coming back to the plot, I felt like this book was very much trying to replicate certain story aspects and certain elements from the previous 2 books that I just mentioned, The Nightingale and The Great Alone. I felt like this book was very much trying to be just the same book as those books, but wasn't fully succeeding in it. Especially with the ending of this book, of course, not going to spoil anything, but I felt like it was sort of trying to give you a certain impression or certain feelings, and it felt a bit too manufactured to me, or like yeah, hard to explain, I guess. It didn't feel completely earned, or it didn't have the same punch as some of Kristen Hanna's other books have. And that is why overall I was a little bit disappointed with it, because again, Kristen Hanna is one of my favorite authors, so my expectations for a new book by her were so high, and then they weren't completely met. And again, still cannot say this enough, I don't think it was a really bad book. I definitely don't think that. But with my expectations and my history with Kristen Hanna, I think it could have been more. I think especially when it comes to the plot. It was amazing, it was very interesting, but it wasn't enough. I guess that's sort of the summary of it. It wasn't completely enough. It tried a bit too hard to be certain things that it didn't really succeed at. And the story itself just lacked in a lot of ways. Yeah, I guess that's sort of my review for this one. I know that, like, of course I always talk about Kristen Hanna, so you might be very curious about my thoughts on this one, but unfortunately I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. I guess more like 3.5 out of 5 stars, because again, it's really not that bad. It's just that I have so much more to say on the critiques than on the positive things, I guess. That's just always the case with my book reviews. So I would still recommend it to read it for yourself and to see what you think of it, but for me, it wasn't completely working, and I'm so sad about that, because I love Kristen Hanna still, and I will still read anything that she writes, but this one just wasn't her best work in my opinion. So now for a bit of a shorter review, because now I'm going to talk about 3 books at once, because they were all rereads, but that is the complete Sleeping Giants series by Sylvan Novelle, or the Thames Files series, that it's also like, that's the official name. So we have Sleeping Giants, Waking Gods, and Only Human, book 1, 2, and 3. And I have read this series before, I've talked about it before. It is a sci-fi series. It's about a young woman named Dr. Rose Franklin, and as a child she found a mysterious, huge, sort of robotic hand. And now she's an adult, and she actually gets involved in a project researching this huge hand and trying to find out if maybe there are other body parts as well. And then the story takes off, and much happens, like so much happens apart from that. Like, that's not even, there's so much more to it, trust me. It is an epic series full with lots of amazing things, and that is why I reread them, but this time I listened to the audiobook. The audiobooks were also great, because this series is told in the format of files, so that means that there are like interviews and transcripts and documents. That's also why it's called the Thames Files, but it also means that with the audiobook there were different narrators and voice actors for every single character. I always love it when audiobooks do that. I love it when there is like an entire cast of voice actors. It makes it feel so real and so, yeah, energetic and so engaging. So the audiobooks, wow, they were great. I loved them so much. I had so much fun listening to them. And overall, I can very quickly say that Sleeping Giants is 4 stars. It's very good, but still lacking a certain something. Waking Gods, the second book, is a definite 5 out of 5 stars. It's the best book in the entire series. And then Only Human is always a tiny bit of a disappointment. It's not as good as the other books. And that one is 3 out of 5 stars. But the series as a whole, it's amazing, it is epic, it is so much fun. Oh, and I can definitely recommend the audiobooks, because I had the best time listening to them. And then we're already at my last book that I finished this month. I told you it wasn't that much, but that one was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is a romance book, a romance contemporary, and it's about a girl named Chloe Brown. Chloe is chronically ill, and she suffers from chronic pain and chronic fatigue, so that is definitely a challenge for her. But then one day she has an almost death experience, and then she decides that she needs to spice her life up, and she makes a list in order to get a life. And this list includes items like riding a motor bicycle and going camping and all that sort, like those kinds of things that are sort of like brave and daring and will give you a life. In order to do so, Chloe enlists the help of the superintendent of her building named Redford Morgan. And once they get to know each other, they discover that there is a lot more to the other person than they had initially thought. So Get a Life, Chloe Brown. This is one of like the most popular romance books right now. It is also the first book in the Brown Sisters series. The other 2 books are about Chloe's 2 younger sisters, but this is the first one, and boy oh boy, wow, this book has been recommended in so many videos, so many people really love it. They go crazy about it, they say it's like one of those cute comfort reads and it's so sweet and everything, and I definitely agree with that. But I also have to say that these types of books probably just aren't my cup of tea all that much. I think for a contemporary romance, it is so cute. It is so sweet. The romance is just so wholesome, so it really makes you go the entire time. There are a lot of very relatable and real life issues at stake in this book, and I feel like they're very well portrayed. And for that, I think it's definitely a very good book in its genre. Not that I've read that many romance contemporaries, but I think it's a very good book because it is so relatable and it does not shy away from certain things. But then at the same time, I don't really have a specific point of critique because I think, again, in its genre, it's just amazing, but romance contemporaries just never fully grab me like that. Also, something that I was mistaken about, I thought this was YA. It is not YA, it is very much adult, like the main characters are in their 30s and everything. Also, there are some steamy scenes that I also wasn't expecting. I thought it was like a cute YA book. I was so misinformed, like, oh, I feel so dumb right now, but yeah, I think you should know that before you pick this up. I didn't mind it, it's just that it surprised me at certain points. Yeah, overall, all I can say about it, it's cute. It's very cute, but that is also kind of my issue, is that if a book doesn't make me say a lot of other things, then I can just never give it like a very, very high rating. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars because, again, cute, lots of cuteness, sweet, like all of those amazing things, but just not much else for me. I just think we should agree that this is not my favorite genre. I still enjoyed it, and I still think that if I ever feel like just doing nothing, feel like reading a book that is just sweetness and cuteness, then I will read the other books in the series. Maybe listen to the audiobooks or something, that could also be a possibility. But for me, it is just not my favorite genre. Yeah, that's sort of the conclusion of that. But it is very sweet. And I also think the writing style is very well done, and I love how fleshed out the characters were. But still, you know, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Not bad, but not great either. And that is it for this video and for my March reading wrap up. I do have a couple of books that I'm currently reading. Most importantly, Chain of Iron, that I'm doing a reading vlog for, but I was sort of stuck with that. Not because the book is bad, but because I'm in such a reading slump. So I know that there are probably some people wondering, because I always do videos about Shadowhunter books. That one will be coming. It will be there in April somewhere. It just was delayed a little bit because of my reading slump, which happens, but I hope you are still interested in it once it comes out. And overall, lesser reading months happened. Not that it was like horrible, just a bit lesser. And yeah, I still hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up or leave a comment saying what you have read this month. And as always, I would love to hear it. And of course, you can subscribe, which I always really appreciate. I post videos every single week about books and things like that and reading. So yeah, if you are interested in that, then maybe go subscribe. And hopefully I will see you again very soon in one of my next videos. Bye!